Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. At the core of narcissism lies a fragile ego, constantly in need of validation and admiration. Paradoxically, the very mechanisms that the narcissist employs to prop up their ego become the seeds of their self-destruction. Narcissism is most definitely a losing proposition. There is so much unhealthiness and turmoil accompanying this pattern that negativity is built into its very fiber. The narcissistic cycle of grandiosity and despair is a perpetual roller coaster. The highs of feeling invincible and superior are inevitably followed by the crushing lows of inadequacy and worthlessness, and unfortunately, unable to maintain a stable sense of self-worth, the narcissist finds themselves trapped in a cycle that leads them to self-destructive behaviors. One doesn't have to look too far to find high-profile examples of people who, despite being very successful, powerful, and accomplished, experience sudden setbacks in their personal and professional lives. Narcissists repeatedly create their own pitfalls by their dysfunctional way of thinking and relating to the world. Their very nature is self-destructive. They fail to understand that you can't do ugly things to people and expect to live a beautiful life. But narcissists simply can't help themselves, attracting the worst from people and eliciting negative responses from the universe, acting as a magnet for all that is negative. Although narcissists invite negativity, they are unwilling to acknowledge it. In attempting to sabotage others, they inevitably sabotage themselves. This self-sabotaging behavior among narcissists is a complex phenomenon which is rooted in the intricate dynamics of their personality. Understanding the motivations behind their actions can shed light on the paradoxical nature of narcissistic self-sabotage. So let's get started. Ever wondered why the narcissist gets to hurt other people and walks away unscathed? Well, the reality is, they don't. While the self-destructive tendencies of narcissists might not be immediately apparent, they all self-destruct in predictive ways. Eventually, it all catches up with them, and there's no place left to hide. To begin, let's talk about how narcissists frequently make impulsive decisions without considering the consequences, leading to self-destructive outcomes. For instance, narcissists might indulge in extravagant spending that wreaks their financial stability, or they may deliberately sabotage a business relationship for the sake of revenge. I understand that some of you may have first-hand experience with this. For a narcissist, the focus is always on instant gratification. However, the impulsive choices they make can have severe repercussions. Even though they may never acknowledge that it was their fault, narcissists are ultimately forced to face the consequences of their actions. This also serves as a valuable lesson for all of us to avoid entering into any personal or professional relationship with a narcissist, if possible. And if you notice the warning signs, it's crucial to exit the situation before it gets worse. Now let's talk about the narcissist's relationships. I believe you're familiar with the inevitable unpleasant outcomes of any relationship involving a narcissist. And while it appears that the narcissist is in control and achieving their desired outcomes, I'm not certain if that encapsulates the entire scenario. Narcissists cannot maintain healthy romantic relationships for long, either due to chronic cheating or acute nastiness. Their friendships tend to be shallow rather than deep, and few have long-term friends. While they may possess keen abstract intelligence, they get by on false charm, which they cannot sustain in close personal relationships. It's common knowledge that narcissists typically cycle through supply, which in relationships means people, and they do so very quickly. However, if you've experienced the cycles of narcissistic abuse a few times, meaning you've gone through a few rounds of love bombing, devaluation, and discard, you might observe that the narcissist actually seems to have very little control over these cycles. It's as if they are compelled or driven to engage in these harmful patterns of behavior. After all, why would anyone willingly blow up their own lives in this way, so often? None of this is to say that we should feel sorry for them, but viewing it from this perspective makes it a little less personal, and rather than dwelling on thoughts of how you could have been better or done better, it offers a different understanding of the situation. If you can understand that this person is basically doomed and is destined to perpetually repeat the same destructive patterns, it shifts the focus away from you, and I kind of like that takeaway. As some of you will know, these cycles aren't just limited to romantic relationships. Narcissists wreak havoc with friends, coworkers, and family members alike, all the while burning bridges. A narcissist will push people away to the extent that they're finally left without any substantial meaningful bonds, and eventually, they may find themselves isolated on their own island of self-importance, particularly as they age and their physical attractiveness and charm diminish. Now, let's discuss how the lack of empathy in narcissists contributes to their self-destruction. You see, we as normal healthy individuals understand that we really need that emotional empathy for establishing meaningful connections and bonds with other people. But narcissists significantly lack this essential life skill, and what's even more notable is that they don't perceive a necessity for it. If you look at the most malignant narcissists, you might hear them boast about their limited empathy, possibly even stating that empathy is a trait for the weak. They are the living example of cutting your nose off to spite your face. But, if you've loved and been loved, you know that they're not winning. Narcissists are very afraid of intimacy or emotional involvement. In fact, they are terrorized by it. They interpret intimacy as vulnerability, as strangulation, the snuffing of their freedom, and death in installments. The fear of vulnerability and the potential for rejection leads them to avoid deep emotional connections. These self-destructive and self-defeating acts dismantle the very foundation of a successful relationship, career, project, or friendship. For instance, narcissists actually feel elated and relieved after unshackling these chains. They believe they have broken a siege, that they are liberated, free at last. But as the cycle repeats, the narcissist finds themselves isolated, facing the consequences of their relational self-sabotage. A life full of manipulations, lying, and using and abusing people often leaves these sick people alone and broken, which, sadly, is the epitome of self-destruction. They might achieve success with material possessions or smear campaigns, but in the end, they remain elusive to what true happiness is. As you delve deeper into the spectrum of narcissism, you'll encounter individuals who structure their lives around pursuing for that love and affection, but then you can see how they clearly sabotage it every time. You see, what's intriguing is that narcissists are quite adept at attracting good people into their circles, and without the entitlement, self-importance, and abuse, this could potentially be a recipe for many successful relationships. However, we understand that this isn't the reality. Even though they have the right individuals around them to make things thrive, what they clearly lack is the essential connecting factor, empathy. Victims express the heartbreak of being lured in, only to witness the narcissist's withdrawal, revealing their cold and unfeeling nature, akin to walking black holes. Feeling safe is undoubtedly a fundamental requirement in any relationship, but as narcissists lack empathy, you'll realize the peril of living with a narcissist. Now, let's discuss the intricate web of lies that narcissists weave. First, it is important to recognize that there are variations in the skill level of narcissists when it comes to lying. While some excel at deception, others may not be as adept, resorting more to tactics like sleight of hand and lies of omission. Nonetheless, the truth eventually comes out, at least in most cases. You see, someone has to be incredibly skilled at lying to navigate through life without facing any consequences. Consequently, the lies told by narcissists typically have repercussions, even if these consequences aren't immediately visible. But eventually, this may result in job losses, legal issues, and severed relationships with individuals who once placed trust in them. It may seem like par for the course for a narcissist, and indeed, it is. While they might escape some of the consequences, it's never a net win. Envision constantly needing to be vigilant or having to cover your tracks. Imagine always having to switch jobs, associates, or even locations to evade the repercussions of their lies. This doesn't sound like a fulfilling life, does it? Now, let's discuss another avenue through which narcissists sabotage themselves. We understand that narcissists harbor a profound fear of exposure, but it's not precisely as one might assume. Narcissists are driven by an intense fear of being exposed for who they truly are. The prospect of their carefully constructed facade crumbling and revealing their vulnerabilities can be overwhelming. The fear of exposure and rejection can trigger a downward spiral, causing the narcissist to engage in behaviors that, paradoxically, hasten their own downfall. You see, most people believe narcissists know that they're narcissists, and indeed, some do, and may even take pride in it, but most are oblivious to the reality. A narcissist may not necessarily know what we call a narcissist in terms of the personality disorder, but they are very cognitive of who they are, what they believe, and how they treat others. The issue isn't whether they label themselves as narcissists, as such labels don't seem to influence them. The real issue is that they are aware of what behavior brings them a sense of high. With that being said, narcissists do not perceive their behavior as evil or wrong. So, what you may perceive as entitlement, narcissists view it as their God-given inherent right. Your interpretation of revenge is seen by them as justifiable behavior, and what you identify as manipulation, they regard it as their intelligence. So, when you view things through this distorted perspective, it makes it difficult to see the truth. Nevertheless, the narcissist is fully aware of a certain discord within themselves. They recognize that they're not like other people, and despite their attempts to convince themselves that it's a positive attribute, deep down, they acknowledge that if they reveal their true authentic selves, they just wouldn't be accepted by other people. They are aware that something is amiss with them, and they realize that if they allow others to get too close, those people will see it. In reality, beneath the facade of their inflated ego, narcissists are hiding shame and insecurity from the world and from themselves too, and so, they rely on other people to bolster their self-esteem through constant praise and attention. And whenever they stop getting it, or they become disinterested in the person providing it, they swiftly move on to the next source. However, if someone were to see through their facade, the entire foundation of their world would be at risk of collapsing. As mentioned before, it's worth emphasizing that a narcissist's sense of self is constructed upon layers of shame, resembling a precarious house of cards. A strong wind could easily topple it, presenting another obstacle, preventing the narcissist from attaining genuine happiness. So you see, when you're engaging with people in an inauthentic way, all the while fiercely protecting this fragile foundation with your life, this evidently leaves you with little room for happiness. While this narrative may evoke sympathy, but through it all and despite their predicament, the narcissist will still find a way to blame you for it. For a narcissist, it is a lifetime engagement in destructive behaviors towards others and themselves, including abuse towards others, feelings of emptiness, constant envy, and various forms of self-indulgence such as alcohol, drugs, and sexual perversion. There's a perpetual struggle in understanding what sets them apart, making happiness, fulfilling relationships, and contentment seem elusive. Narcissists fail to grasp that happiness is an internal journey. Despite being confronted with the repercussions of their actions, such as damaged relationships and familial discord, they persist, blaming others and viewing relationships in a win or lose, black and white manner. They exhibit low self-esteem and minimal self-awareness. Throughout their lives, they seek out new sources of validation, constantly moving to new places. I've watched 2 generations into their graves with no significant moment of self-realization, epiphany, or clarity. After 50, the past catches up with the narcissist. They have treated so many people badly, and those individuals want nothing to do with the narcissist, so their social circle decreases. As they age, they become less appealing, making it much trickier to find a constant stream of new sources of validation. They are not as rich as they thought they would be, so life gets tougher. They usually end up alone and lonely, or they latch on to someone desperate and stick with them, but poverty and isolation are not great, no matter how they try to spin it. An aging narcissist is a sad sight. In summary, the self-sabotaging behavior of narcissists is a manifestation of their internal conflicts and deep-seated insecurities. Despite their outward display of confidence, their actions often serve to perpetuate a cycle of self-destruction, leaving them isolated and unfulfilled. So, I hope this helps you. If it has, please consider sharing and subscribing to my channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. Always feel free to share your experiences in the comments section below. I express my gratitude to everyone for tuning in and watching. Let us help spread the awareness and lead healthier and fulfilling lives.